Good morning, everybody, and happy Mother's Day. Welcome, if this is your first time, to the First Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco. I am Vanessa Southern. I'm the senior minister. I'm here with Daniel Jackoway, who's one of our worship associates. Our incredible choir is hiding in plain sight in the choir loft with Bill Ganz and Reiko, our organist, and Mark Sumner, who was here and just disappeared. It is wonderful to have you all here, and wherever this morning finds you, joining us in worship this day, with whoever is with you in body or in spirit. This day in particular, Mother's Day, I feel like is one of those days when we often are very full at heart, especially when we carve out space and time to allow that fullness to be present. And so I want to hold this morning that I know some of you have lost your mothers in the last year. I'm thinking of Kelly Murray, thinking of Carrie Steer-Salazar. I'm thinking of many of you I know who have lost your mothers this last year. And others who I know lost mothers in years past, but this day just weaves it right back into our lives freshly. Just want to hold that. We have candles in the front, as those of you may already know, but certainly if you don't, I'd invite you at any time during the worship, whatever the fullness of your heart is, to come up and light a candle. The place where you put the burned out matches actually has a little water in it, so we won't have any disasters in the midst of our ritual moments with masks. So I invite you to do that, whatever you need to bring the fullness of the day, all the people that we're grateful for and have with us. We want to light a candle of joy, maybe, or just be present to the joy. And also just name that the time of birth is still the most vulnerable time in a woman's life, and has been through history even more so. And so to name the fact that all of us are here because not just one woman brought us into life at great risk to her own, but this whole lineage of women brought us into life in this moment. And so this incredible miracle and gratitude for our very being here this morning on this Mother's Day. I, for one, am grateful for all of the women, all of the mothers who brought each and every one of you gifts into this world this morning. So in that spirit, I want to light a candle, maybe fuller than usual, for all of us who are here in body, and all of us, all of the people who maybe are here with us in spirit, as we begin our worship together. So let's start then in a hymn of gratitude. It's around, if you dare. It's in your teal hymnal, though it may also be in your order of worship, number 1010, We Give Thanks. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as you feel moved.
Now, please join us for our unison chalice lighting. The words are in the order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we gather together. If it is your first time watching, thanks for joining us. You can follow along in our order of service, which is available in the description of this video and is emailed to everyone who receives our newsletter, which you can get by signing up by filling out our connections form, which is on the welcome table or through a link that is in the order of service and video description. The order of service also lists upcoming events and links to opportunities to connect, including our Zoom coffee hour for our Livestream folks, which takes place after service in parallel to our in-person coffee hour, which happens here at the church. Please note in the order of service, chances to deepen your spiritual practices, engage in deeper study, and also to put your values into practice through a variety of opportunities here at UUSF. I want to let folks know that thanks to all of your generosity, we will confidently hit our annual giving goal for next year. We have about 20 outstanding folks, but over 200 pledges have come in, and your generosity and support is, as always, astounding. Thank you all. We are talking about where and when and how to celebrate, so stay tuned. COVID continues to haunt us, and today it is showing up in our Google Docs training, which had to be canceled for illness. Everyone is fine, but not fine enough for our COVID rules. So we will reschedule, and please let us know if you are interested so we can keep you posted directly as we find another date. Please note that today is the deadline to register for our retreat at the end of May. It is up in Sonoma, and it is always a good time. Don't miss it. If you have questions about the budget, we have times for you to meet after church with Laura Ludwig, our Director of Operations, on the next 2 Sundays. Finally, I want to invite Merrick Munn up to share some more information about our special offering this week.
Good morning. I'm Merrick Munn, and I'm the chair of our congregation's SCW Scholarship Committee. I joined this committee a few years ago to honor my mother, Marbeth Munn, and our dear friend Dick Castile, who ran this committee for many years. And it's one of the most rewarding things I've done in my 30 years here with this congregation. Our scholars, as you can read in the order of service, are San Francisco high school graduates who are first gen, meaning first generation in their family to go to college. And these scholars are amazing people. It is so rewarding to work with them, and I'd like to introduce one of our scholars who recently graduated from college and was a member of our scholar family for the last 4 years. Her name is Nadra Mohammed.
Hi everybody, my name is Nadra Mohammed. I am a recent graduate from San Francisco State University with a Bachelor's of Science in International and General Business. I am now working as an admission counselor at San Francisco State University. I am a first-generation college graduate who comes from a low-income family, and paying for college is very hard, especially coming from a low-income family, and I couldn't afford the expenses for books and supplies, and that is why I'm very thankful that I got SCW scholarship, because this helped me in many ways. This scholarship helped me to go to college and finish college without having to worry about how I can afford my tuition and also my book supplies and school supplies in general. Without SCW, I wouldn't know how I could have afforded college. I would like to take this moment to thank SCW mentors who made going to college possible for low-income families like me. I would also like to special thank Stephanie Guan, who is my mentor. I'm very grateful and thankful that I had her as a mentor who supported me throughout my college career. Thank you again to all SCW mentors.
Well, I think you can see just the amazing quality of our scholars, and I thank you for your continued generosity in supporting them.
And now, let me give you all a moment to greet one another.
I'm going to invite us to settle back to our place, wherever we picked our place this morning. And we are going to deepen back into the spirit of worship by singing our meditation on breathing, which we haven't done for a while, and the choir will lead us. And those of you who are new, the words are in the order of service, and they're very simple. But we just invite you to sing along, and there are different parts. If you have a good ear, you can pick the part you want to sing. Just sing and get lost in it and allow it to deepen you into this time.
now please join in our spoken covenant and sung doxology. The words and music are in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
In the spirit of holding all that fills our hearts this day, or trying to, so that we can find between us, among us, what it is that we come here seeking or needing this Sunday, I want to invite us into a prayer that was written by my colleague Kathleen Rollins. So in a spirit of meditation and reflection and prayer, Spirit of life, you have been a father and a mother to us all. We enter into this time of silence and reflection with mixed emotions. This is Mother's Day, a day set aside to honor, celebrate, and in some cases simply to reflect on those women who gave us birth. Some of us come to this day with joy, with strong and tender feelings for the women who have earned the right to be called mother. They not only gave us our lives, they are responsible for shaping our spirit. They have fed us, played with us, nurtured us, listened to us. They have given unselfishly for us. They have loved us unconditionally. If our mothers are still living, we make the extra effort to stay in touch and try to find ways to give back a portion of the love which we have so abundantly received. If our mothers have died, we take time to cherish our memories of them, memories which may flood our eyes with bittersweet tears of longing. We miss her, and we feel that loss even more acutely on this day, while also being grateful for her strength, her wisdom, and her beauty, all the gifts of life which she has passed on to us. For others, this day is not a time of celebration, but rather a time for reflection. Perhaps we cannot bring ourselves to buy that Hallmark card, the ones that wax poetically about a mother's love or her presence in our lives. Rather, we may feel her absence through death or indifference. We may have complicated, difficult, unhappy associations with Mother. Instead, may we use this time to reflect on those who have mothered us, the people of all gender identity and embodied living in our lives who have shown their love for us, whether through motherhood or mentoring, those tough, gentle, truth-telling, loving, wise, whimsical, deeply human beings who have served as our teachers, our mentors, our guides, our friends. And on this Mothering Day, may we remember the great Mother who sustains us, whose body is the very substance of our existence, the very ground we walk upon, the very source of our being. From whatever place we come this morning, let us once again enter into a time of silence, knowing that it is in silence where great things fashion themselves. Amen.
I baked with my mom from when I was 4. I started out by scooping the ingredients. When we got to the brown sugar, I would always steal a pinch, since it was the only time I got to taste that unique molassesy sweetness. Later, I observed and learned how to cook full meals. And I cooked my first dinner for my family when I was about 10. Spaghetti with a homemade ground beef sauce that was little more than canned tomatoes, oregano, powdered garlic, and usually a glug of red wine that made it smell delicious and sophisticated as the alcohol burned off. I had no originality, of course, just doing it the way my parents had showed me. Soon, I had 3 recipes in my repertoire, as I added in chili and roasted steak. These recipes were not hard, but that was part of my parents' brilliance. Once they had seen me succeed a couple of times, they didn't need to supervise me. As soon as I was tall enough to easily reach the stove, they could let me cook without even being in the room. I don't know if I particularly enjoyed cooking, but I definitely liked the feeling of responsibility that came with it. When I was 15 and told my mom that I wanted to try vegetarianism, she laughed. I don't hold this against her. Did you notice that my first 3 recipes were all beef? Even a little older at 15, the only vegetable I would happily eat was a Caesar salad. And I demanded meat at every meal. But despite her initial skepticism, she was very supportive in me giving it a try. She took me shopping so we could fill the freezer with imitation meat, which is how I survived for the transitional few months as I slowly built up a taste for more vegetables and beans. She also made a hard left turn in her own dinner planning, as she was still cooking most of the meals. Rather than having to ensure that there was always an option for the kid who demanded meat and refused to touch most vegetables, she ensured that there was always an option for the vegetarian kid who didn't like vegetarian food. This change in diet motivated me to get deeper into cooking. And my mom, who had been flexitarian before I was born and before that word existed, showed me her favorite recipes in her Moosewood vegetarian cookbooks. All of this prepared me for one of the highest pressure parts of my college experience. No, not the finals, or the term papers, or the job interviews, or the student group leadership. It was the year that I lived in a campus co-op and was given a weekly dinner shift. 4 of us had under 3 hours to prepare a meal for our 60 hungry housemates. And in a small bit of cosmic revenge, I did not get into one of the vegetarian co-ops. So despite having been a vegetarian for about half a decade at this point, I always had to ensure that there was a meat option and a vegetarian option. The 4 of us on the cooking shift would rotate who was the head cook every week, setting the menu and managing the day. And it was stressful, especially if we fell behind, which is easy to do. Do you know how long it takes to chop 20 onions? Don't forget to budget 3 minutes to wash your hands and put a Band-Aid on, because the odds of a moment where you lose focus and make a mistake are quite high. I always looked forward to those cooking shifts, though. In the midst of the overwhelming and often abstract world of learning linear algebra, computer algorithms, and existentialist philosophy, it was nice to have an afternoon where I was forced to take a break from my studies and work as a team on a concrete task with a clear end state and no real consequences if things didn't go to plan. And cooking still serves that role for me. It is engrossing and physical enough to focus my often frantic mind and calm any anxious or upset emotions that I have. And it all started on a stool in the kitchen, measuring brown sugar with my mom, making chocolate chip cookies.
Our mothering of the world and one another takes many forms, and in that spirit, our offering this Sunday will be both taken and gratefully received for our work as part of the SCW scholarships that make college possible for young people in this city.
My mother was born of a German mother, raised in this country, and a few years after her birth, my grandmother's husband was murdered. So my grandmother had to raise my mother by herself, and lo and behold, my mother had twins and eventually 5 children. I think she kind of taught me how to cry, so I like that in reference to this first song. Songs my mother taught me, to the days long vanished, seldom from her eyelids were the teardrops banished, were the teardrops banished. Now I teach my children each melodious measure, often tears are flowing, flowing from my memory's treasure. Songs my mother taught me, in days long vanished, seldom from her eyelids were the teardrops banished, were the teardrops banished. And because these are both short, we decided to do a second one, the Children's Hour, which reflects upon being a parent, and I'm going to just toss that down. Being a parent and listening to the children upstairs is quite touching. Charles Ives, the Children's Hour. Between the dark and the daylight, when the night is beginning to lower, comes a pause in the day's occupations that is known as children's hour. I hear in the chamber above me the patter of little feet, the sound of a door that is opened, and voices soft and sweet. From my study I see in the lamplight, descending the broad hall stair, grave Alice and laughing Allegra, and Edith with golden hair. Between the dark and daylight comes a pause that is known as children's hour.
Thank you so much, Richard. I love it when the birds answer the songs at the very end. I don't know if you all can hear it, but they seem to really respond to the music in here. Our reading this morning is from Anthony Doerr's book, All the Light We Cannot See. It's a novel, for those of you who haven't read it, a novel set in Paris about a single father, Daniel Leblanc, and his daughter, Marie-Laure, who at the age of 6 becomes blind and who later will have to flee with her father, Hitler, and live in a small walled citadel city of Saint-Malo with Marie-Laure's reclusive great-uncle by the seas. But this is an intimate moment between father and daughter. He fills the big iron tub and turns his back as she undresses. "Use as much soap as you like," he says. "I bought extra." The train ticket remains folded in his pocket like a betrayal. She lets him wash her hair over and over. Marie-Laure trawls her fingers through the suds as though trying to gauge their weight. There has always been a sliver of panic in him, deeply buried when it comes to his daughter. A fear that he is no good as a father, that he is doing everything wrong, that he never quite understood the rules. All those Parisian mothers pushing buggies through the Jardin des Plantes or holding up cardigans in department stores. It seemed to him that those women nodded to each other as they passed, as though each possessed some secret knowledge that he did not. How do you ever know for certain that you're doing the right thing? There is pride, too, though. Pride that he has done it alone. That his daughter is so curious, so resilient, that there is this humility of being a father to someone so powerful, as if he were only a narrow conduit for another greater thing. That's how it feels right now, he thinks, kneeling beside her, rinsing her hair, as though his love for his daughter will outstrip the limits of his body. The walls could fall away, even the whole city, and the brightness of that feeling would not wane. Here ends our reading.
Stars,
For the father in Anthony Doerr's novel, All the Light We Cannot See, life and parenting with it will take him in so many unseen directions. He becomes a single father, which wasn't part of the plan. His daughter loses her eyesight, so they learn to help her navigate the world in a way that was not a part of the plan. War breaks out, and he needs for them to decamp out of Paris, not planned. At some point, he will no longer be there to protect her, as true as that will be for all of us ultimately, and so he and she will learn the lesson of separation and goodbye too. Again, not something he planned for, few of us do. What life means, what parenting will demand, has as its only constant, like life itself, change. Those of us who enter into this crucible of parenting, however we enter in as caregivers, will find ourselves at times daunted, often unsure, regularly forced to dig deep. We will fumble and probably have moments of triumph, or even, dare I say, some moments of pride. Perhaps the only other certainty is that whether we like it or not, like marriage, not in ways we could have predicted or would have seen or even chosen, we will grow and deepen in this set of relationships. We will be changed by it all. And although what is true of parenting is true of all love relationships in those ways, in my experience, parenting generally wins the contest for which love can throw in the widest array of curveballs, challenges, and surprises, at least in my experience so far. We will find our superpowers in the course of parenting, and we will likely find our kryptonite. What's yours? What's the thing you have to learn again and again, get gobsmacked by, tripped up over far too often for your own good? Mine is all the stuff about learning to let go. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who struggles with this piece of it. I had some early proof of that when my daughter started kindergarten in the suburb of New Jersey where we lived, the first day of school. It meant that as suburban parents who lived more than a mile from the school, we dutifully walked our child slightly up the street to the bus stop. There was this handful of kids there with us, all in their new outfits, their new backpacks, many of them, I'm sure, with laminated cards with our names and addresses and phone numbers. A new lunchbox, complete with a balanced lunch of things that met all of the school requirements, too, for not causing anaphylaxis in other children, with our children instructed sternly not to share, which seemed funny given how long we had already spent trying to drill in the commandment about needing to share, but we got it. Learn to hold things in tension and paradox. And the bus came, and we all ushered our kids up the stairs with big waves and goodbyes and selfies and hugs, and the bus pulled away, and we all cut and ran for our cars. And we got right behind the bus like a funeral procession. Lights were blinking lest we get cut off from that head car. And I suppose that we told ourselves that we were doing this so that we could photograph that first moment that our sweetie gets off the bus. But let's be clear. We were doing this so we could make sure, because it was kind of complicated. They had to get off the bus and then cross this lawn, and then there was this asphalt place where they had to find exactly where to line up with the rest of their class. And there was a lot that could go wrong in that. And I bet if you look closely at the photographs from that day, you can see this thin shimmer of the umbilical cord that wasn't completely cut at birth. Letting go is not easy. Julie Lythcott-Hames writes about those same umbilical cord parents. She writes about it in her book called How to Raise an Adult, a book drawn from her 10 years or more as the dean of freshmen at Stanford. She talks about parents walking their kid to their PhD meetings or interviews, parents calling the employers of their 20-something child to, register complaint about one other policy or work circumstance. It isn't a new thing, too, lest we think we invented it. She points out how in 1899, General Douglas MacArthur's mother apparently moved to West Point with him and lived in a suite at Craney's Hotel overlooking the academy where she could watch him by telescope to see if he was studying. And anyone who has read Augustine's Confessions, a page-turner if ever there were one, knows of his mother Monica, who seems to follow him everywhere across North Africa, showing up just in time to do things like cast away the woman he loves, keep all his vices in check, God make me chaste and continent, but not yet, he famously said, and no doubt standing outside doors when he had big interviews with the powers that be in ancient times, listening. Lythcott-Hames points out that this, quote, very involved style of parenting offers short-term gains in the form of safety, opportunities attained, and outcomes secured, but at a long-term price. And one of those prices that gets paid is in our kids' ownership and knowledge of their own competency and confidence. Things like learning how to make dinner. Sometimes, I guess, helping can be too much of a good thing. At least I keep hearing that, which I know is true in other realms, like I'm sure I've mentioned before, a study of people recovering from strokes. The circumstances most heavily correlated with slower recovery is an overly helpful spouse. Competency and confidence. It seems to come around better with less help. And I know that intellectually. I've read it a lot of different places, but I find it hard to completely own, especially in my own parenting. It seems so unloving to me to let those that you love struggle and suffer. I mean, if you can throw a protective arm in front of a kid you love, why wouldn't you? Even your own body. So much easier to take the awkwardness or the hardship on yourself than to watch them straining against and under it, right? Not entirely, they tell me. In our religious tradition, we believe that the lives of others are sacred texts from which we too can draw wisdom and learn. It's why we don't treat our memorial services like generic moments of witness, but tell as much as we can the story of a life so we can learn from it like a sacred text. And not very long ago, we did a memorial service for Ardith Fortier. Ardith was a mother of 6 children and an honorary mother to others who she gathered up along the way. Among her kids is Carrie Steer Salazar, who many of you know, and who in fact came to this church in order to get to spend more time with her mother. Doesn't that warm every mother's heart? Where are you, Lila? Just kidding. And Carrie did so because Ardith was busy, but loved church, and so coming to church was a sure way to get to see her mom. Ardith was a member here. She was active. She brought meals to people. She did all kinds of acts of service. She sang in the choir. She was fiercely curious and smart and free-thinking, and she found her tribe of big-hearted, but also gutsy and free-thinking rebels here among the Unitarian Universalists. And talking to her kids, all I could just feel constantly was the incredible level of adoration and just how wonderful and highly functional her kids are. And I'm telling you that they're wonderful and they adored her and they're highly functional because also what came through in listening to the stories, and I felt they were told just for me, was that Ardith parented in a way that you might call now free-range parenting. Is that right? Carrie, I think one of your siblings even named it that, laughing. Those of you who came to the service know she loved to let her kids roam in the natural places where they often had their homes. She loved it because she had loved it as a kid. Her rules were you had to wear shoes when you were riding a bicycle or a horse, and if you went in the wild, in the wilderness for a hike, you had to take a handkerchief and a knife in case you got a snake bite. Because, you tourniquet it off and then cut, suck out the venom. As a child, Ardith had learned to trust her ability to deal with circumstances, and she loved roaming in the world to meet what it had to offer her, and so she allowed her kids to learn and to love all that too. And I know it isn't a completely lost art, this approach to parenting, because I'm told every year about the Japanese children who are sent on their first day of school. Do you know those stories? And they're sent out in this rite of passage that's considered important, to walk to school alone. But of course, there are all these adults lining the street to watch out for them. Ugh. But this sending of our children out into the world, it can be so hard for me. I want to throw a bubble around my child and the kids that I love, this force field. I want to vaccinate them against meanness and violence and even pain, and I would spend my whole life doing it, I fear, or be tempted if I could. And yet I know from my own life experience that we all have to learn that the world is uncertain and pain is a part of it, and so is wrong, and so is fear. And I know my kid already knows this, and that your kids and grandkids do too, and the kids you love. And I know that strength, and I know that resilience, and a host of other skills are the ones that you and I only found, most of us, through experience that allowed us to learn them when we lived meaningfully in the face of what life would throw us. But it involves trust. Trust in this imperfect world. Trust in our kids being able to figure things out fast and in time. Trust in a bit of luck that car will see them when they're busy on their phone or laughing with friends as they cross blithely the streets of life. Trust that the stranger will come along at the right time. Trust that even when things go wrong, they will, like we did, find a way to make something of it, even the hardest stuff, that alchemy of the heart that finds a way to turn hardship into a superpower, or at least wisdom and compassion that we use as an offering to the world afterwards. And as a mother of a child who will turn 18 next week and go to college next fall, that trust has to be there, because the letting go, unless I'm going to get a room across from her dorm and a telescope, which I am not, because somebody has to pay for college, and also I do have some pride, because life will force this lesson on me, as it does on all of us. Eventually, we have to let go. Ultimately, in the largest sense, if I can be, ministerial for a moment? We all have to let go and trust one another to the world. In her poem, To Have Without Holding, the poet Marge Piercy wrote, "Learning to love differently is hard. Love with the hands wide open, love with the doors banging on their hinges, the cupboard unlocked, the wind roaring and the whimpering in the rooms, rustling the sheets and snapping the blinds that thwack like rubber bands in an open palm. Learning to love differently is hard." Carrie told me this morning when I asked permission to talk about her mother that her mom was a secret worrier, which totally blew, I thought, my point in the sermon. That even as she sent her kids into the world, she hid how much she worried about them. But actually, that's a perfect point for the sermon. That learning to love differently has always been hard, even for those people who make it look so easy, and maybe it's always been hard for all of us and the people who passed us into the world, and the only way through it is to practice. Ugh, God, the practice. Trusting that shoes and a snake bite kit will be enough. That with that and their own inner resources, those we love will find their way through the wilderness places. Trusting that the world that meets them will be like the streets of Japan on the first day of school, lined with caring neighbors, people who themselves had once been met with caring neighbors on a long ago first day, and that this is also the order and nature of the universe in which we reside. Trust that we have loved our kids enough to knit them up strong inside, strong enough to take a few blows to the ego, to life plans, and continue on the slightly deviated path ahead and find and make the merry, meaningful adventure that awaits them there, wherever that is. And ground ourselves, too, in what the father in Door's novel sees in his daughter as he bathes the small, young, vulnerable, but powerful, too, girl that night, on the cusp of all that will face them. See all of that and our role in it, too. See that his daughter is so curious, so resilient, that there is this humility of being a parent to someone so powerful, as if he were the only narrow conduit for another, greater thing. That's how it feels right now, he thinks, kneeling beside her, rinsing her hair, as though his love for his daughter will outstrip the limits of his body. The walls could fall away, even the whole city, and the brightness of this feeling would not wane. Ground us in this. Spirit of life, on this Mother's Day, bless all who mother the world, ourselves among them. Bless our fierce devotion, our gentle, protective hearts and arms, and help us to live into the hardest requirement of love, the letting go. To trust that the wind will find the wing. Amen. Let's sing together in our teal hymnal, hymn number 1051, We Are.
We
going to ask us to remain standing, put down our hymnals. I'm going to ask my parents to come up since they're here, talk about mothering and parenting. And also, since I've been rubbing my nose, it's really not fair to ask anyone else to hold my hands but my parents. And I'm going to ask if we feel comfortable to join hands, or if you don't, just cross your arms across your chest if you don't want to hold hands for whatever reason you have. And let's make ourselves into the connected web of life that is always the case, but we can see it sometimes more clearly in moments like this. And now in our comings and our goings, may the light of love shine upon us. Out from within us, be gracious unto us and grant us peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Amen. Happy everybody.